Rolex is one of the most fashionable, stylish and classic brands in watches. It was established over 100 years ago, and from presidents to actors, sportsmen and business tycoons, everyone has worn it. Due to its timeless aesthetics and premium build quality, it is basically loved by all. But buying a Rolex on the grey market or local ads to save money can be dangerous, as nowadays there are so-called superclones. These clones are like nothing I've seen before. I've been to many places, Turkey, China, and I saw all the local markets selling something called AA or AAA replicas. But those are really bad compared to the superclones. So I decided to do an experiment and get a superclone to see how real it can really be and show you guys how to spot the differences to a real one, because that's really scary. Now, just as a disclaimer, this video is just for educational purposes on how to spot a fake watch, and buying replicas hurts the real businesses, and also they won't hold its value like a real Rolex, and reselling is permitted anyway. Also, the watch will be destroyed after this video. Now, I've spent hours searching the web to see some legit sources for superclones, but most of the websites looked really fishy. They sometimes used real Rolex pictures to fool people, and sometimes there were real pictures, but they are for sure no superclones, as the color on the dial or the hour markings are really off. Now, mostly the bezel is just painted instead of using a ceramic bezel, and also there's no platinum dust insert and other things, which just gives it a really fake look. But after hours of research, I found a website called superclonewatches.is, and they had some real videos and photos, and there the bezel with the hour markings looked just like real. Now, first I thought maybe that's gonna be a scam or a trick, so they film real watches to trick people into buying it. But yeah, in the end I thought, let's give it a try, I'm curious. Now, I talked to some guy on WhatsApp, which felt a bit weird, but he started to showing me the models, and then I ordered. Now, I chose the Batman 126710 BLRO with the Swiss 3285 movement. This should be a one-to-one clone, a so-called superclone. Now, I chose this because Pepsis are very hard to get the colors right, but on the Batman, the colors, everything, those superclones, they look really crazy identical. It's like unbelievable. Now, I was almost sure the parcel wouldn't make it through customs, but it got sent with FedEx and they didn't even check it, as it was an express parcel, which is pretty crazy. Now, here was the moment of truth. I got the watch and unpacked it. Now, I asked for the box and papers to show you the differences here too, because usually here you can see it very well. And especially the box and papers are probably the easiest way to tell if the Rolex you want to purchase is genuine. The box looked like really high quality, now almost like 99% like the box of my real Rolex. Also, they included the right hang tag, because on some websites I saw the wrong red hang tags in the box, which tells you immediately there is something off. Also, the bezel protector of the watch didn't look like the real one, but this can be removed, so it's not really a sign for it. And also, guys, you should be very careful, because some people sell replicas in real boxes, so it makes it even more difficult. You can buy those boxes on the aftermarket and they just put the replica in and trick you into believing it's a real one. But this replica box looked amazing real. Only the guarantee card was easy to spot as non-genuine. Now, real Rolex warranty cards should have an NFC chip built in and that you can scan. And also, they should always be filled with the dealer details on the back. If there is nothing, you should be careful, it's probably a replica or there's something off with the box. Also, the color of the papers was a bit different and stitching on the leather pouch was off as well. But other than that, it looked crazy real at the first look. Now, the watch itself, this is unbelievable. I had many clones in the past, but after seeing this, I realized they were all trash. Now, first, let's start with the bezel. The superclone has a real ceramic bezel that has 99% color accuracy. So it's kind of impossible to actually see if it's a clone if you don't have a watch to compare. And even the hour markings have the same color like on the genuine model. The bezel action feels very identical when you turn it, but it's a little bit less clicky. But if you won't have a real one next to you, you can't really spot it. It uses the same 904L stainless steel on the case and band. Now, this is the first time I had a replica where the band felt like the real band. Now, usually on cheap replicas you have very sharp edges and you notice the play in the parts. And sometimes even they are just plated and the shiny parts they just come off. Also on cheap replicas it's quite common to have rust after a while, as they don't use good quality stainless steel. Where you can usually see and feel the difference is the buckle. The crown is sometimes not straight or has bad proportions, but on Superclones this looks spot on. Also, the Superclone has the same glide lock mechanism and engravings like the real one. It's also common that on real watches sometimes people use fake bands from Superclones, so be really careful and double check the bracelet with a professional if you feel it could be off in terms of weight or general feel or play. I wouldn't be able here to spot the differences without a real one next to me. Now today all current production Rolex watches use sapphire crystal. And here on the Superclone it's sapphire too. It even has the Rolex crown lasered in the crystal at the 6-hour mark. Now pay attention to it. On a cheap clone it's usually lasered as a full line crown, but the real one uses tiny dots. But the Superclone also has the crown with the dots lasered and it looks unfortunately perfect. Now here you probably won't spot the difference neither. The rehaut, which is the inner round wall surrounding the dial, has Rolex all over engraved and also a serial number. Unfortunately, also on a real Rolex it's a random number, so you can't really check it. But the adjustment of the Rolex engraving can be used to spot the fake. It needs to be perfect. On the left side the hour indicators should start perfectly with the R of Rolex, and on the right side they should end with the X. On cheap clones this is always off, but on Superclones it is scary on spot. Now without a microscope it's pretty invisible and looks perfect. You can also try to check the font of the model on the dial. On cheap replicas it's sometimes off and it's printed too fat. On the Superclone here it looks sharp and crisp, so here it's very hard to see the difference too. But the date viewer Cyclops is something that separates cheap replicas from Superclones. Rolex Cyclops are exactly 2.5x magnification. It's very hard to reproduce that for some reason, and on the Superclone I wouldn't say it's 100% perfect, but it's very close to it. So try comparing it to a real one. Also check the font of the date dial. Usually on cheap replicas the date is not really sharp and crisp, and you can see with magnification that the numbers are not perfect. On the Superclone again the numbers are pretty sharp and crisp, so it's very hard to see. Then you can test something in the dark. The hour marks and the hands should have superlume applied and light up really strong. To test this, you can use the flashlight of your phone and light it up for a minute and then go into the dark. It needs to be a strong and even light. Now if it's weak or if it's not even lit up, then it's probably fake. But here again the Superclone lights up very even and it's almost impossible to see a difference in the dark. Now I checked a cheap Pepsi replica and the Superclone under microscope, and here you clearly see the differences. On cheap clones the hands are very bad shaped and the corners are also very bad. On a real Rolex this is always perfect. So under magnification you can see for sure if it's real or not. But here also again on the Superclone it has almost perfect hands, so you need to look very closely. A little bit too sharp even maybe, but very close to the real one. You can only see this with magnification, and the same goes for the numbers on the date dial. Now let's talk about the crown. The crown must be smooth. Rolex is always smooth, but the outside must be sharp and shiny and detailed. If you see under magnification that the crown is not crisp or sharp, it's probably fake. On the Superclone there is a minimal difference to the real one, but it's not noticeable without a microscope. However, the crown action is what matters. As said, the crown and each of the locking positions must be very smooth. On cheap clones it's sometimes very difficult to get into the correct locking position to wind just the time or the date. On the Superclone it feels a little bit more spongy than on a real one, but it's very close. Now you must be very careful when checking the movement, because cheap GMT replicas also usually don't have the jumping hour hand and they're just decoration. I was really surprised that the GMT feature really works on the Superclone. Now the GMT hand moves in tandem with the hour hand, only at half of the speed. If it doesn't, if it just moves the same speed or whatever, it's a replica for sure. But here on the Superclone the whole mechanism just works like on the genuine one. So from the outside it's almost impossible to see the differences without magnification and having a second watch in hand, but on the inside you can see clearly if it's a replica. The Superclone uses a Clone Swiss 3285 movement. It claims to have a 48-hour power reserve, and it's even more I think. After 50 hours I rewinded the watch, but it held the time pretty good. I've opened the movement to compare it to a cheap replica and it's pretty mind-blowing. Cheap replicas will have no Rolex stamps in there and they use cheap Chinese or whatever movements that have a very low reserve. But this one had all the stamps from the 3285 movement. But here's the 100% guarantee on how you can spot it. Now on a real Rolex movement there is only one arm. This is the bead adjuster red arrow in the picture. It's on the balance bridge of the genuine movement. This is because the genuine movement has a free sprung balance. That means on the genuine movement, the speed of the movement is regulated. That means adjusting how fast or slow the movement runs by adjusting the moment of inertia of the balance wheel via tiny weighted screws on the rim of the wheel. That is the green arrow in the picture. On all replica movements, doesn't matter which one, regulation is done via a regulation arm that can be adjusted to lengthen or shorten the effective length of the hairspring. Now that's why you will only see one arm on the genuine movement but two arms on the replica movements. That's the only and easiest way to tell if a movement is fake or not. Anyhow, the rest of the movement in this Superclone is part compatible with the genuine Rolex movement. That means that it's possible to swap gen parts into this movement to improve it. A common part swap on this movement is to replace the balance complete, pallet fork and escape wheel with gen parts. Now with those parts swapped, it's very difficult to tell it apart from a genuine caliber. Also the Superclone is waterproof and comes with a seal for the caliber and crown, but I bet it's not as waterproof as a real one, especially from the pressure, so I wouldn't go swimming with it anyway. So for the movement, the only difference you will see is the surface quality of the parts and the bead adjuster arm and the regulator arm. Real Rolex caliber parts will always be more shiny and polished. That's probably the easiest way to see the difference. But if the Rolex caliber has been modified, it's very difficult, so be very careful and don't be fooled by just logos. So overall it's crazy how close those Superclones come to genuine ones in terms of the look. But keep in mind, it's never a real Rolex. A real one has better materials, real gold hands, etc. and also they will hold or increase in value, while a Superclone will simply not. I don't recommend purchasing one for obvious reasons, but if I would probably get a Superclone and not those cheap replicas that are really trash. Now I hope this video just helped you to spot a replica watch and learn more about why only a real Rolex can keep its worth. And now guys, it's time to destroy it and I'm signing out. Bye.